Roser, he's Sam Spiegelman. This is Louisiana versus all y'all's Recruit That Boot. And Sam, I've got a new light set up here because I can't afford to do anything about my internet situation. So I'm just moving some deck chairs on the Titanic on my end of things. But hopefully the internet is kind today because we've got a lot of top prospects around the state of Louisiana to hit on some notable updates, including now we have a commitment announcement on deck on Thursday from Hamilton Christian's Javon Vital Jr. And so we'll talk a lot about Javon and his recruiting process and what our expectations are from Thursday, as well as a couple of other top names in this, not just the 2027 class, but at least one 2026 standout who really impressed on Friday. How are we doing on your end as you juggle your own deck chairs over there and just try and deal with the curveballs of parenthood?
Yeah, it's well, things have just been absolutely seamless and no hiccups at all. Sleep is plentiful, it's rich. We're all tired. We're talking about mid-season over here. It's tough. We did assemble this bookshelf during a couple of Noah's naps over the weekends. I think today's Wednesday, so the weekend extended into Monday. Who knows what are days at this point? I do have to check that multiple times throughout the day, but it's been fun. We were talking obviously leading into the show. It's been a little bit of a slower news-ish week or two in Louisiana, but obviously things are going to pick up. It's the midway point of the month, second half of the recruiting calendar. Things are picking up quickly with this 2027 class, and a couple of maybe interesting developments to close out 26 before we get to signing day in a few weeks.
I had a frantic questioning of this Allison at some point last week of blah, 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 Thursday. Well, it is Thursday, right? I had to stop for a second and I didn't have my phone on me and emphasized, have I been doing this whole day? And she's like, no, you're right. Someone else just didn't show up when they're supposed to. You're on it. I was like, all right, cool. Because once one thing doesn't go quite the same way, then I start to get confused. And maybe I'm the insane person here, and that call didn't come in because I'm thinking it's a different day. But let's get into the Javon Vital news. On Tuesday, he announced that he will be announcing his commitment on Thursday. One of those fun news stories that for someone who tries to not have the same word in back-to-back sentences, guys are announcing when they're going to announce, and trying to find ways to word that every time is always fun. But we've talked about him a bunch before. He's one of the top prospects in Louisiana's 2027 class. Only one other prospect in the class has announced a football commitment thus far, and that's Evangel Christian quarterback Pop Houston. And so now Javon will be the second Louisiana 2027 prospect to announce. LSU obviously has been firmly in the mix with him all calendar year since their offer to him on February 1st. But USC, UCLA, and several others coming into the mix. Houston's been an interesting one for him as well. I guess let's just start with Javon. What makes him stand out so much as a player and someone that once more of these colleges got a chance to take a closer look at this spring and summer, that offer list started to fill up a little bit. He's as dynamic as anybody in the state. What has stood out to you about him at this point in his development?
Yeah, first off, there's you can commit, you can announce your commitment, you can pledge, you could declare. Sorry, that's a baby reminder. But let's take off. Let's talk about what makes Javon special. First, I need to show you this. Where is this?
Every one of those verbs you used it is used in the LouisianaVersusAllYall.com story of Javon having a commitment on deck now for Thursday. He's set to declare. He's set to pledge. We're running the full board.
And of course, he'll give a verbal at the end. What makes Javon special? I think let's just give some context. I sent you these. Who even knows? Was it yesterday or days ago? 5 games because he's been injured. I think he missed 1 game.
No, they had a bye week a couple weeks ago, so he's been healthy, but they've only played 5 through 6.
He plays quarterback for Hamilton Christian. He's got 745 yards passing with 8 touchdowns. He's got another 860 yards rushing with 18 touchdowns on the ground. He's averaging almost 15 yards per carry every time he touches the rock. He also has touchdowns via punt returns, which are personally my favorite, 72, 68, and 98 yards. I think the fairest comparison for someone like Javon is much like what Juwan Johnson meant at LCA to that program. Every time Javon is on the field at Hamilton Christian, which includes tomorrow, October 16th, against Elton, which is a big rivalry game, he is the best player on the field, and that means just out athleting, out maneuvering. He is a spark plug. He reminds me a ton of Darren Sproles from the skill set of short, great equilibrium, balance, straight line speed, but also that hard to tackle, great, power through contact, and really that dynamite ability that even though he isn't the tallest person, he isn't the fastest person, he does everything really well, and you could put him as a slot receiver, as an outside receiver, as a halfback, as a safety if you really needed to, but really on special teams, an array of different roles where he is someone you want on your football team. He is going to win you games one phase of football or the other. He's someone, if you're LSU, and we talked about it, USC, UCLA, Houston, the Fighting Sacramento State Hornets. If you're LSU, this is someone you don't want to leave the state because you don't want to find out that this record-setting running back or athlete does this for another program elsewhere that you play against on Saturdays.
I've told this story a bunch of places through the last few years, and especially this year as more and more folks ask about Javon since the LSU offer. But I saw him as an 8th grade basketball player at a holiday tournament at Scotlandville and was impressed with him and the role that he was already playing for a really good Warriors basketball program, obviously. And his coach in both sports, Dexter Washington, who's also, a close mentor figure for him through the years, said, man, if you think he's good at basketball, you should see him in football. And then I've also heard through the years that he may be as good at baseball as he is in any sport. And so he's just that type of talent, that type of competitor too, where I mentioned him playing varsity as an 8th grader in both sports. He's grown up playing against older competition, and he wants to be on the field and doing anything he can to help his team, no matter if he's 4 years younger than most of everyone else on that field, or quarter, diamond, or whatever the sport may be, the track. And to watch him continue to grow up through these years and figure out, okay, what can I get better at? And he was an all-state player a year ago. He's on track for higher numbers across the board now as a junior. He has bulked up considerably while remaining as dynamic and quick as he is. Seeing him this summer, I'm like, dude, you're 10, 15 pounds stronger with clear straight muscle than the last time I had seen him, and still is fluid and quick as all get out. And so he's a lot of fun to watch in whatever capacity you get a chance to watch him year round. And he's someone that, and we'll kind of transition into the actual recruiting piece of all of this. When I asked him after the LSU offer, okay, so what are they talking to you about maybe at the next level? Because people are starting to list him more and more as a wide receiver. I really liked him as a DB in his early film. Frank Wilson loves him. And Frank likes the idea of what he can do with the ball in his hands out of the backfield and a versatile chess piece on offense. And he said, man, just put me on the field. They asked me to do anything. They want me to run through a brick wall. I'm going to go do that. And I think that's kind of the way that Javon is wired as a competitor in general. But getting into some of the college stuff, it has felt like LSU has been really well positioned with him throughout, because some of that attitude that he was sharing with that run through the brick wall conversation was about LSU specifically, for a young man that grew up in Lake Charles watching LSU in all sports and dreaming of, maybe one day I'll be playing baseball for this national championship LSU program or whatever it is. And now he's a top football prospect in the country. LSU actually recognized that talent more quickly than a lot of the other programs around the country. That it was a really big emotional addition to his offer sheet when it came. and they have made him a clear priority in this class for all the reasons that you mentioned. They don't want to see that guy get out of state lines and go do what they know he can do elsewhere. And so I felt with him, similarly to what we talked about with the 2026 prospect who got offered that same weekend, Pook Ellis up at Franklin Parish, that there's a desire to represent the state that's been there since childhood. He's a guy that's been prioritized by LSU in a way that they're going to make it happen. And as we get into Thursday, that's my expectation still, is that he's a purple and gold Tiger here at the next level.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. He's coming off his third visit to Baton Rouge in the last month and change. He's been on campus, I think, for that La Tech game, another early season, I think the Florida game, and was just back on campus for the win over South Carolina. Something we've talked about a little bit on the podcast, but it's worth mentioning again, is the staff's willingness to not wait and put an offer on the table for in-state athletes, which has been a bugaboo for a decade past. When you think about even eventual Tigers like Racy McMath or, you name it, my brain is not functioning at a capacity to give you prime examples. But LSU, Les Miles, and even Ed Orgeron's unwillingness to offer as early, because when Alabama and Ole Miss and Georgia and now Texas and A&M and Oklahoma, which are in your regional backyards, offer, the pressure is on LSU. And Les Miles faced as steep as a test of this as anyone. And you saw even Ed Orgeron move to offer Jamar Chase quicker. Or Lawrence Keys in that cycle. I can recall being, when was LSU going to join this race that, these blue bloods across the country were now offering, to get an offer to Javon as early, then also get him on campus. From speaking to our guy, Dexter Washington, Javon was a little bit hampered this summer. Dexter thinks that if Javon was able to make as many visits to all the schools that came by Hamilton Christian in the spring, then we might be talking about the Alabamas and Georgias and Texases and Oklahomas a little bit more in this recruitment. But one reason that I feel extremely confident for the Tigers on Thursday, not only has he visited 3 times this year, he's been able to see what this staff in particular, and you mentioned it with the ability to keep your dynamic ability and your quickness and what makes you special as an athlete, as a skill position player, but also with that upped weight to take contact and be effective in the SEC. And we're seeing that with guys like Juwan Johnson and Xavion Thomas and Aaron Anderson, who, like Javon, are not the biggest receivers. Not everybody is Nick Anderson, who is a towering 6'4" X-wide receiver, or even Chris Hilton, who has world-class speed and is pretty well rocked up in his 6'2" frame on the outside. But for the Xavions and the Jawans and the Aarons of the world, seeing that success and that blueprint where they're position versatile, they're being moved around and they're playing different roles, I think that's really put LSU as the team to beat with Javon going into Thursday's announcement.
The one that has been most interesting to me in terms of contenders for Javon to try and pry him out of state, USC at points in this recruitment has really tried to add him to their small thus far but notable pipeline of Louisiana talent that they are really trying to grow here. But it's just another one of those situations for a Louisiana kid, and we've talked about it with some others, where even in the modern era of NIL recruiting and all of those things, there seemed with him and the folks around him to be a sense of, if LSU wants you, or wherever it is, if a place wants you and you're a priority and it's a place that you feel is the right place for you in all of these ways and check all these other boxes, there's going to be opportunities for money, and don't kind of nickel and dime and just go to whatever the biggest signing number may be. And so you can tell the significance of LSU in his recruitment from the offer and all the way through these now. We're only 7 weeks into the college football season to sort of visit the same place 3 times is pretty significant. It feels like, despite some really strong polls from elsewhere around the country, that LSU was going to be tough to beat if they prioritized him the way that they clearly have. and vice versa.
Yeah, I mean, you kind of hit it on the head. Much like with the boys from Franklin Parish, when you're from certain parts of the state that feel a little bit overlooked on a week in, on week out basis, with the exception of this year, we could compare and contrast which games that we end up going to across the state of Louisiana. And for the most part, it's going to be the New Orleans metro area. It's going to be the BR metro area. You and I love the 337. We love going to Lafayette. We love going up to even big powerhouses like Ruston, West Monroe, and Neville, or Evangel, Captain Shreve, big 5A teams. But not often on this podcast are we talking about Hamilton Christian every single week, or the big game against Elton, or getting up to Franklin Parish for that game. So their chance to be on the national stage, one for us to now talk about 193 yards rushing and 5 touchdown LSU commit potentially for Javon Vital, or when he's making those plays and they see his name flash across that screen. It's one of my favorite parts of Sunday night football and Monday night football, when the kids use either their college but largely their high school to identify them. And when you say something like Hamilton Christian, most people are like, who, and what? And then you do your homework and you find out what kind of career this kid is having over there. It does carry a lot of value. And we know that on this podcast, when you are the king of a small school like Tackett Curtis and Tylen Singleton out of Manny, when you're the mayor of a place like Manny, much like Javon is on track to be the mayor of Hamilton Christian, and have some stock in there with Albert Simeon and Lake Charles, you're doing something right.
And yeah, I mean, when you talk about Manny has all of the track record that's been there for them, obviously.
Right.
For Hamilton Christian, Javon's the first student athlete to receive an LSU offer, would then, obviously, if he were to commit on Thursday, becomes the first commitment, and so on and so forth. And when that offer came February 1st, there were 100% other recruiting media and folks that were asking me, where is this school? Because they weren't even familiar with it yet. And so he is helping in a lot of ways. I mean, he and his guys out there on the basketball team just won a state championship. They're doing some great things for Hamilton Christian, and just kind of continuing to solidify its name on a bigger map for more folks around the state and around the country in a lot of ways with Javon's recruitment. And so I think that's a really cool thing for him, for the Warriors, for everybody out there, and something that he doesn't take lightly at all. You mentioned Albert, and so let's just kind of use that transition. It's really cool, not only for Hamilton Christian, but the Lake Charles area, that we haven't talked as much about as many top end prospects coming out of there in recent years as was the case a few years back. And now you've got 2 of the states and 2 of the nation's top 2027 prospects right there. And Albert is fresh off a visit to Notre Dame. You had a chance to catch up with him and ask about how that one went. He's someone we've talked about on the show a few different times. He's, I think, most of our top ranked prospects in that class in Louisiana, and a top 10 to 20 prospect in the nation overall. What's been kind of the latest with Albert? How did things go with him going up to South Bend, and where does he stand with everything?
Yeah, this has been a really active fall for Albert as he explores the real contenders in his recruitment. We know he's already logged visits to LSU for the McNeese State game, 2 visits out to A&M, and of course up to Nebraska. We kind of view them as the big 3 in this recruitment moving forward. But he just got his first taste of South Bend. All indications are it was a very positive visit. And from talking to people involved in this recruitment, even though he's a Lake Charles kid, didn't grow up an LSU fan, more of a Saints fan, more of an NFL sort of background. So I don't know if there's that desire. I don't want to say desire, because LSU is very much in this, and we'll get to that in a second. I think there's more of an openness to potentially leaving the state to play college. And we know that A&M has done a good job, along with Nebraska and now Notre Dame. And I say all this only to set up that Albert has 2 more visits locked in to LSU before the end of the season. I'm going to put that out as soon as we get off here. Brad Davis has been one of the most central figures in his recruitment. Often we see that Brad Davis gets what he wants when the kid is from Louisiana. He has been exceptional recruiting guys since he got there, inheriting guys like Will Campbell and Emory Jones, and even before that with guys like Cardell Thomas and such. But this is probably the biggest fish on Brad Davis's plate for 2027. He is the number one interior offensive lineman in the country. We had him last week as one of my 2027 MVPs. I just think he is, the tape every week gets me fired up. I'm hoping to get a night and in a live view of this kid mauling kids. But I don't think he's anywhere close to a decision. I think these next couple of visits will be pretty telling as he starts to figure out where his OVs will be and when he's going to lock in that commitment.
You mentioned our midseason draft, and I'm going to use what we were just talking about with Javon and Albert to pitch on another gimmick idea that you didn't seem to love as much, but drafting Louisiana high school football prospects to build our best basketball teams, to then ask folks who has the better basketball team. And we're talking about two guys that are really good hoopers out there in the Lake Charles area. And you see, obviously, Javon, we've been watching play basketball the last 3 years, and I mentioned state championship and all those things. Albert's mobility is, as we've talked about with so many great offensive linemen through the years, he moves well on the basketball court, and you kind of see it in some plays where he's downfield making blocks and he's putting 2 or 3 guys butts on the turf on a single play. It looks like he's out there running the fast break at whatever the hell he is now, 6'2", 6'3", pushing up toward 300 pounds. And I think it'd be a lot of fun to talk about these guys, Ahmad Hudson, Elijah Haven, Roderick Tesano, and build some teams just to, as much fun as we may have talking about it, then let them argue about it on Twitter. But that's
as long as my team has Ahmad Hudson, I'll let you draft whoever you want, my friend.
So I think we feel like Ahmad is the consensus number one pick, because I was hoping I'd win the coin flip there.
Yeah, you get the interior offensive lineman and the scat back, and I'll start with the bona fide 2-sport college athlete who is just wrecking havoc on the football field and is really just 2 months away from collecting a state championship and joining that incredible Ruston basketball team. Sheesh, Jared, I was born at night. I know I'm tired, but not last night, and I'm not that tired.
Ahmad and those guys are getting ready for I think the biggest game in the state this week, Neville versus Ruston, the 100th meeting of those rivals. The winner will be at least tied for the lead in a loaded 2-5A district. The other game to watch, most notably in that 2-5A this week, will be Ouachita Parish versus West Monroe. And West Monroe is in the mix to try and remain undefeated in the early going of 2-5A after a comeback against previously undefeated Alexandria last week, in which another guy we talked about last week, Trez Davis, the Tulane committed wide receiver for West Monroe, scored 3 times. He's still got the cast on his right wrist from his wrist injury and surgery that he's just freshly back from, and he put up almost 300 all-purpose yards, over 200 receiving yards, 3 scores in moments of that game, just willing the Rebels back to victory. And it just looks that much better a few days in retrospect that we were talking about him middle of last week, because he went absolutely off as you were starting to see some of those highlights, some of those numbers hit the timeline on Friday night and over the weekend. What are you thinking about the Tulane prospect who feels like he's trying to announce himself as good a receiver as any in the state in this 2026 class?
Yeah, Trez is my man crush of the year. Again, I don't know if it's like a product of the fact that I'm not out on the field right now, but watching what he's doing and literally got off the phone with him a couple of hours ago. He's not even 100% healthy, and he is still playing at the top of his game. We talked last week during our MVP breakout seniors portion that this is, first of all, it's unheard of territory that he already has a 1,000-yard campaign under his belt as a junior, but now playing hurt, making these insane catches for West Monroe. I think that if and when the Rebels are charged with making a playoff run, this might be the Trez day. If you haven't gotten the front page news about Trez, like, it's coming. I'm really kind of hoping that a state championship run or playoff run could really expose more eyes. First of all, Coach Sumrall, Coach Sheridan already know that they are incredible evaluators of talent and have this baller committed if he sticks with Tulane. Houston offer, they have been coming very hard for what I'm hearing, has been multiple months, and they finally pulled the trigger after what you're talking about, an insane Friday night for West Monroe. He's already locked in his official visit to Houston. I'm going to put that out in a little bit. I think Houston is going to get things very interesting. Their top receiver from Iowa Colony, right outside of Houston, is flirting with A&M. So Willie Fritz and company are doing a little bit of flirting of their own with one of Summerall's top guys. Listen, there's a lot of more Power 4 programs that are also taking notice. Not LSU per se, but around the country, programs that are playing big games on Saturdays are hearing word of Trez Davis. So the more exposure, the better for him. He has already captured my heart for this season. I'm excited to see what's in store next.
Yeah, whenever you're ready to go watch West Monroe at some point in the playoffs, let me know, because Trez is one of the top players on my list of guys I really want to see at some point before the time this season's out. For Tulane fans, man, it's so tough. I just saw Braden Allen on Friday in a big game, LCA, with a 48-7 win against LRCA. And just, keeping up with the Tulane program in recent weeks or recent months, as Braden's recruitment hit a new gear and ended up with him backing off of his summer pledge to the Green Wave and announcing a commitment to Oklahoma. It's so tough to know that you're one of the teams that is able to evaluate and identify these guys really early on and go all in on them and get the commitment. And then at some point late, the Power 4 programs come in and swing things. In Braden's case, obviously heading to Oklahoma now. And for me, as Braden flipped, I'm looking at Trez Davis and thinking, man, I really like that they're getting Trez Davis still. And now that's potentially in jeopardy as Houston, and we assume others here sooner than later, start pushing. What is that process like from your perspective? And just, I don't know, for a Tulane program, it's tough. They're doing everything they can. They're committing to that program, getting some investment there. They're identifying the right guys. And then just the struggle to try and hold on to those right guys is such a challenge. How do you kind of navigate that? Or how do your perspective covering some of these recruiting processes look at the way that some of these things play out and how tough it is to hang on to those guys when they end up doing the things on Friday nights like Trez is doing right now?
Yeah, I think first of all, you have to have your hats off to them, because Tulane is evaluating these guys first and getting them to commit. You talk about Trez being just an excellent eval, knowing the context of what he accomplished as a junior. And then Braden Allen, they out-recruited Texas Tech, which has plenty to spend. And you just saw LCA. Braden has a lot of intriguing talent as a big-bodied receiver that can really move and make plays with the balls in his hands. Not to mention his brother's, second team all conference at Houston right now, which is hilarious that Houston wasn't recruiting Braden even harder down the stretch. But listen, Tulane has always had this uphill battle of keeping kids home when schools like LSU or Mississippi State or Ole Miss would get into the mix. Sometimes kids are more likely to chase the bigger logo, especially right now, Tulane being in the AAC. Doesn't have the same appeal as Houston in the Big 12 or obviously some of these SEC programs. I think what Coach Summerall has done is shown that you can compete at Tulane and you can compete for playoff spots and you can be drafted and eventually use it as a launching point or like I said, go from Saturdays to Sundays. It has its ceilings to say, because not only is John Summerall doing it at Tulane, but he's also being mentioned with all these big coaching names, coaching searches around the country. And schools are going to use that to recruit against Tulane. And certainly, if you're a bigger logo, you're going to say, why would you stay there? And then your coach is going to be gone in a year, and you're going to be right here in a year anyway. So success as evaluators or successes as coaches on the field come those problems. Nick Saban had to deal with that for years, as other coaches said, why would you go play for Alabama? Nick Saban's going to retire when you're at the end of your freshman year, so why would you go there? Those naysayers who negative recruit can only be right once, right? So we don't know how long Coach Summerall will be there, but certainly it it's a good problem that they're evaluating so well, and it's a difficult problem to try to hold on to these talented guys. I think that Tulane is going to have its hands full with Trez as well.
We'll see how it goes. A lot on the horizon for Tulane here the rest of this season. They've got an 11 a.m. kickoff against Army on Saturday morning, a team that beat them in the American Conference Championship. And now as Tulane's trying to compete for a potential playoff bid, possibly if they can keep things rolling here and go undefeated the rest of the way. But they'll have their hands full with some challenges on the recruiting trail as well. Saw it play out with Braden Allen, hoping to hang on to Trez Davis now and keep him in state. And I think it was at Tucker. I think it's time to go. We've got the official alarm that it is time to close this thing out. Sam, as always, man, appreciate you and looking forward to when you can get back on some of these sidelines here soon.
Counting down. If it's November, it'll be a miracle, but that's the plan, God willing.
He's Sam Spiegelman. I'm Jarrett Roser. This is Louisiana vs. All Y'all's Recruit That Boot. And until next time, y'all be well.